Welcome to Matt's Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. Obviously, today is all about the Fed and Janet Yellen. Will they, won't they? Market is pricing it around 33% chance of a rate hike. The two-year note, however, has moved dramatically and is probably expecting a rate hike. I think, that the chance of a rate hike is higher than 33%. Eric Scott Hunsader up for auction tomorrow. Flash crash. He produces fantastic visuals. Holger Scheipitz, Uni credits. Nielsen calls for a Fed rate rise as Fed has become a source of instability, and I agree. I think the sooner they get the first rate hike out of the way, the better. My home thoughts. I love this photograph, and it actually sat there. This is Finch Hatton's close to the equator, no light pollution for miles. The star bar is the perfect place to observe the Milky Way, and indeed it's a fantastic photograph they've produced. And that took me back to Rumi. We come spinning out of nothingness, scattering stars like dust. And then I like this photograph also, fantastic photo by Kimmy Swimmy on Instagram. It's of a lady, I think it's in Tonga and in the sea, and it's another great photograph. I was watching the news yesterday. I took this photograph, refugees at the border, and it's just extraordinary and biblical, and it's just, I don't know what to say, but it seems to me as if this would get worse rather than get better. The White House said Mr. Xi would be hosted at the White House for a state dinner on the 25th of September. That's obviously a big visit amongst the G2. Francois Picard, Putin's new front. This is Syria. At a time when the West is wavering over past calls for regime change in Damascus, will a Russian deployment ensure Assad sticks around for good, they ask. MK Badra interprets the insertion into the Russian insertion in Syria. So on Syria, Moscow is driving the Barack Obama administration nuts. This is coercive diplomacy at its best, he says. The intervention is no longer below the radar. Moscow intended to create misgivings in the American mind, and it has succeeded, he says. Yet no one in Washington knows what the Russian intentions are, and that's probably true as well, I think. Japan protested a day before yesterday as Russian plane enters its airspace. The Japanese air self-defense force scrambled 4 jets to head off the intruder, which it believed was Russian. After analyzing its course, a defense ministry official said. And I concluded by saying Vladimir is making flanking moves in Syria, Japan, and we could inquire where next. Abe Shinzo, from a photograph of June 12th, met Admiral Harris, new head of US Pacific Command, born in Japan with a Japanese mum, basis of stronger bilateral relations. And the point is that Japan is very much the US ally, and in particular has a role to play in this pivot. New York Times, each of these dots represent one person killed in the Syrian conflict. It's been horrific. Assad says only Syrian people can decide if he quits. As for the president, he comes to power with the people's assent through elections, and if he leaves if the people demand it, not because of the judgment of the United States, the UN Security Council, the Geneva Conference, or the Geneva Communique. Washington Institute quotes General Petraeus, US should be prepared to respond positively if Iran regime becomes status quo, not revolutionary player in the region. That's an interesting statement from Petraeus. And the South African court has rejected the government's bid to appeal the Bashir ruling. Judge Hans Fabricius, supported by 2 other judges, said Bashir did not enjoy diplomatic immunity against a global arrest warrant issued by the ICC, and that's an important decision. International markets, the OECD says the world economy is set to grow 3% this year and 3.6% next year. They'd previously estimated 3.1% this year and 3.8% in June. And they're citing primarily a slowdown in emerging market economies like China and Brazil. Bloomberg announced yesterday that the ratings agency Standard & Poor's has cut Japan's debt rating from A+ to AA-. Holger tweeted Bank of Japan's sizable purchases of Japanese government debt have kept borrowing costs low, but that the Bank of Japan now holds 30% of all government bonds. Reuters, breaking views, this is all about the AB InBev Sap Miller potential tie-up. They're saying it brews a global reset, regional disposals, spins and amalgamations would follow. Sap Miller surged by its biggest daily increase in its history yesterday. Bloomberg is talking about how this merger will create the OPEC of beer. Two companies are by far the largest players in the industry by almost every metric. Market share is the first one that jumps to mind. For many merger arbitrageurs who wonder how such a deal could fare with antitrust regulators, combined the two companies would control almost 30% of the global beer market. To put that in perspective, OPEC controls about 41% of the world oil market. Let's move on to the currency markets, and obviously the decision out of the Fed will be a key driver. The euro last trading at 113.31. When I walked in, it was 112.95. Dollar index has probably slipped off the levels of this morning of 95.29. Japanese yen 120.87. Swissy 0.9708. The pound 154.99. The Aussie 0.7174. India rupee 66.298. South Korean 111.7048. The real hanging in there by its fingernails, 383.27. Egyptian pound 783, and the South African rand much firmer actually, 13.2764. The stock market was strong as well yesterday. Let me put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index. I think will be above 100 at year end. The OECD cut 2016 Eurozone growth forecast to 1.9% from 2.1%. Have a look at this chart, which shows the widening yield differential between the US 2-year and the German 2-year. I think that's an important signal in the noise. Euro dollar, I'll put up a 3-month chart, I think will be at 104 at year end. Gold, we're last trading here at 1119.51. I think we'll be near 1,000 at year end. Crude oil, strong session, but now slipping a little bit, 47.09. 6% jump in the previous session. This was because data from the US Energy Information Administration showed the largest crude drawdown since February 2014. Glencore sold shares to raise $2.5 billion and reduce debt. So they've actually moved the dial because they've gone and raised the capital, which was a smart move. Daily Mail reporting 1 dead, at least 20 injured in Chile as homes collapse and waves pummel its shores. And copper zero hedge early in the morning. I'm not sure what's happened since then, but copper obviously jumped on the news of that Chile quake. Emerging markets, OECD, China growth is slow to 6.5% in 2016 from 6.7% in 2015. But China growth dynamics difficult to assess, and I've been talking about that as well for quite a while. Goldman Sachs' blank feeds as China's handling of stock market decline ham-handed and sloppy. And I think that was one of the points I was making in that slew of articles I wrote. Let's move on to Africa. I was listening to BBC Newsday this morning, and this was the quote: "This is not an attempted coup d'etat. This is a coup d'etat." That's Burkina Faso. France 24 said Burkina Faso's interim president cabinet detained by the presidential guard. You will remember that piece I wrote, Ouagadougou's signal to sub-Saharan Africa. That link is on Rich Wrap-Ups. Descalzi, who's the CEO of Eni, saying selling down Eni's stake in Mozambique, we could do it or not do it, he said. That made me remember our visit to Maputo and our very lovely meal in the Polana. And I took this photo of my Hannah 1,197 days ago. My, she's grown up. UN investigator warns of mass atrocities in Burundi, said the government of Pierre Nkurunziza is no longer attempting to build a society based on the rule of law, and that the tradition of impunity from past decades has become further entrenched and is being used as a tool of repression and violence. The South African all-share surged to 3.11% yesterday and has popped into positive territory. It's up 2.52% year to date. Dollar rand, I'll put up a 6-month chart. It's strengthened a little bit of late, but I think we're going to see it sell off again. Egyptian pound 783. Egyptian EGX 30 rallied 1.27% yesterday, but remains down 18.597% year to date. CCTV Africa tweeted France's president pledges support to crush the Boko Haram. President Buhari in France said in an interview in Paris with France 24, I don't think it is healthy for us to get the Naira devalued further. The central bank is making foreign exchange available to essential services and industries, he said. Buhari has yet to name a cabinet since he took office at the end of May, said markets are being harmed by the delay in ministerial appointments, which will happen by the end of the month. Civil servants are running the government of Africa's top oil producer competently, he said. Work is being done by technocrats. They are there and they provide the continuity. Nigerian all-share is down 12.4% year to date. Ghana's Stock Exchange Composite Index is down 8.44% year to date. Zimbabwe's consumer prices fell by 2.77% in August, unchanged from the same rate in July. Kenya, East African breweries firmed 0.67% yesterday, closed at 300, which is a 1-month high. And I think that was all about the news coming out of Sad Miller. If you haven't seen my interview with Charles Island at the time of their full year results, which were very strong, in point of fact, please take a look. Equity Group has rallied 17.9% this month after becoming steeply oversold as Helios harvested their long-standing position. KCB Group has rebounded 5.68% this month. Nation Media Group, and all this data is on Rich Wrap-Ups if you want to go and look into the shares of these companies. Nation Media Group is down 14.68% in 2015, in what has been a brutal sell-off. Uchumi up 25.94% since announcing the arrival of a substantive CEO. Kakuzi plus 81.11% year to date and is a bull outlier at the bourse in 2015. Kenya shilling last at 105.99 when I looked, but I'm of the view that we're near a base. Nairobi all-share retreated 0.31% yesterday. It's down 8.72% year to date, but it's up 8.12% since the 27th of August closing. NSE 20 is still down 16.73% year to date, but it's up 4.32% since the August 27th closing, when both indices closed at 2015 low. Concerns around the US Fed and a possible rate hike to be announced today put the shilling on the back foot yesterday, saw it print 106 in the morning before closing out around 105.75. Sassini rallied 7.39%, it's up 29.96% year to date, and they've embarked on a process that will create value for shareholders, and the share price is lagging that process. Safaricom, which rebounded real hard and plus 12.63% since the 27th of August, met some light profit taking yesterday. Any correction will be short-lived, however, because there were 8 buyers for every seller yesterday. Uchumi we've already spoken about, Nation Media as well. NSC was strong, up 5% to close at 21. They are correlated exactly to activity and turnover, and this trajectory is headed in the right direction for them. Centum more than doubled the bonus payout to its 90 staff to £1 billion in the year ended March, making it one of the largest bonus allotment in corporate Kenya, translating into an average entitlement of 11.1 million shillings per employee. Centum closed unchanged. Obviously, the big news yesterday, international news, was around Sam Miller and Anheuser-Busch, and that encouraged EABL up to close at a 1-month high. Atlas Development and Support Services slumped 8.86%, closed at a fresh 2015 low of 3 shillings and 60 cents. It's down 17.12% year to date, and absolutely correlated to the fortunes of the East African oil and gas and extractive industries. I'm grateful that you stopped by. I really am. Thank you.